you guys have one person to share key takeaways? One of the key takeaways that I heard in the groups is similar to what Yodit was saying when she presented a little bit earlier today, and that is the key point of just being vocal. So being vocal, in my mind, comes in two forms. Being vocal, one, is making sure that your voice is heard, but then it's also really sharing your experience and not being afraid to talk about yourself. So we noticed that even though the groups and members of the groups were having really great dialogue, sometimes it was a little hard to hear one another because maybe some of us are shy or just, our tone is a little bit low. So I think being conscious of that, especially in the country that we're in, because people don't always understand why you're soft-spoken. So being very conscious of that and being vocal. But then the other piece is really being able to talk about your experience and coming off as somebody who's very confident and knowledgeable, not only in the area that you're educated in, but also just being able to present yourself in that manner. So this includes obviously really knowing your resume very well, so you're not having to kind of reference it, and really more from even an outside sitting up and presenting yourself as a confident individual. So those are 2 points that I kind of took away as I was walking around the room.
IT technologists, and we have mentors who are sharing their experience, and take away with doing your research before you go out for a job search, making sure that you understand the company, and making sure that you make that personal contact before you go for that interview. And it was really helpful to have that. Thanks.
From the international business discussion, we talked about what it means to work in international business. So working in IMF or World Bank and other multinational companies like Apple or Coca-Cola. As well, we discussed about some of the skills it takes to really work in international business, like analytic skills. So learning tools that can help, like Excel or SQL or whatever tools you need in the industry you're working in. Also, we stress the importance of cross-cultural communication. In international business, there's a lot of communicating with people from different countries, so it's really important to understand how to talk to people and how to relate to people.
I'm from project management table, and Lily was explaining that there is no degree that you can get that will get you the job. You don't come out of college and get that job. It's through work experience, and she identified some of the jobs so that we could go after to prep us or to lead us towards project management jobs, and also volunteering opportunities that help us and get introduced to the industry, and also describe what the day-to-day life is like, and how it never gets boring.
Okay, what we have discussed in our table are like the fields that have good potential to get like the information system job, like Oracle, SQL, MySQL, Big Data, SharePoint, and the likes. And we also discuss interview steps and procedures, how we should prepare our resume, how we should post it, and how we should approach recruiters, the interview process, the interview procedures, and also how to negotiate rates with the recruiters, and how to also offer letters and how to start jobs. And we also learn or get some information that we should be consistent with what we have, and we should have confidence. We also discuss the challenge when we start doing like new jobs. Thank you.
Part of what we talked about, like doing your research and to pick where you want to go, finding mentors, asking questions, and to pick a field that's going to work for you, and just focus on that and take time to study it and present yourself with confidence.
So at this point, what we wanted to do is also share with you some key general things that we hope that you learn, not only specific to your field, but also key things that you learn that you can take away about networking and mentorship. So we're going to talk about networking, mentorship as general, and then we do have a section called failures that Fizum and I will talk to you about. So from a networking standpoint, we tried to think, okay, what are a few key things that you guys can walk away with today? So when it comes to networking, obviously there are multiple ways that you can meet and network with people. This is one way. And this, yep, events somewhat can be categorized in the piece of like professional groups, but I really wanted to highlight participating in other professional groups that maybe that don't come to mind very quickly. So obviously every industry has professional groups, but within that industry there also tend to be minority groups that, at least from my experience, will be a bit more helpful from a general group in making sure that you succeed. So my background is in marketing, business. So for me, I'm a part of the National Black MBA Association. And so the reason I chose to participate in the National Black MBA is I can participate in AMA, which is Association of Marketing, something, I forget. But anyways, it's a national organization for marketing. But the reason that I chose the National Black MBA is because I felt as though they can really provide a bit more insight as to, as a minority, how to be successful within your field. And they're a bit more inclined, from my experience, to help you in getting jobs. So not only networking in social events that you find around DC, and not only working with the national organizations, but finding minority groups that can also be helpful to you. The second piece is networking with recruiters. So this I learned not that long ago, maybe a few years ago when I finished grad school, and it's really how to network with recruiters. So one way that you meet recruiters is when you get to the job interview. But another great way is if you know that you're interested in a particular company, at this point, everyone's information is online. So you can go on LinkedIn, you can find a recruiter from that company, and you can essentially kind of like stalk them, which is what I do, where I send them emails and I tell them that I'm interested, I send them my resume, and even if they don't have an opening, I try to set up a call with them and say, I just want to talk to you for 10 to 15 minutes. That way they learn about your background, and when there is a job opening that comes up, ideally you're one of the first people that they will call. Because recruiters, they tend to pull people from a couple different places. Number one, if they have a job opening, they're more than likely to hire from within before they post the job outside. So ideally you either know the recruiter or you know somebody in the company. Then if they can't find somebody within the company, then they'll start to post it online. Now, you'll see job applications online, and if you complete the application form, you hit submit. Not to be pessimistic, but that's one of the ways where it just doesn't work. Because there's so many people that submit online applications, it almost goes into a black hole. So your best bet is really to network with somebody within the organization who can vouch for you, or find a recruiter that you can connect with and say, and prove to them, on a 10-minute phone call, if possible, that you are interested. And there are a lot of times that these two groups will link together. So I went to an event late last year that the National Black MBA Association threw with Volkswagen. So how many of you guys knew that Volkswagen's national headquarters is in Reston? Did anyone know that? I didn't know that. So I saw a job posting for Audi, and obviously who wouldn't want to work for Audi? And then I saw that the National Black MBA partnered with the minority group within Volkswagen, and they held a networking event. And at that event, they pulled a few minorities from Volkswagen. They had a panel discussion, and that panel really gave you insight as to how it is to work at Volkswagen. And they had two recruiters that were at that event, and one of them was their VP of Human Resources. So all I needed to do was talk to her for 2 minutes. I just introduced myself, told her that I was interested, and she said, great. And I said, I'm particularly interested in this one particular role. And she said, sure, connect with me on LinkedIn. Now, normally I would hesitate to do that with somebody that I didn't know, or the way that LinkedIn works, if you try to connect with somebody you don't know and you don't have their email address, it won't let you. But she gave me her business card. So I go on LinkedIn, I put in her email address, now I'm connected to her, and anytime that a role opens up with, whether it's Volkswagen or Audi, I can email her directly and say, hey, we met here, this is my background, this is what I'll be interested in, can we talk? That's really all you need, is somebody to agree with to talk to you for 5 minutes. So those are how you can link professional organizations and recruiters. The second piece to networking is social events that you can go to. And a lot of the times, and for many of us, including myself, I avoided social networking sessions because it would make me seriously nervous to go up to somebody that I didn't know, to just talk to a complete stranger and tell them essentially my life story. So I avoided them at all cost. But I think that's a great way to practice for your interview. So when you're going to a networking event, what you essentially have to do is deliver your resume within a couple minutes. So that helps you when you're meeting one person after the next, reread your resume in your head and present yourself within your 30-second speech. Now, if you can master that, then you can go into any interview, ideally, and be very confident with not only your skills, but what's written on your resume. So it's a great way not only to meet new people, but also just practice and gain that confidence that I've heard being discussed across all tables. And then the last piece is, how do you network to land a job? And this kind of ties back into the first piece that I talked about. And my greatest resource has been LinkedIn. And it's not only where I connect with people that I would like to talk to, but it's also just finding different resources. The second piece that ties into LinkedIn is informational interviews. So what I was saying with the recruiters, you find a recruiter and you ask them for 10 minutes of their time. I've done this countless times. LinkedIn sometimes has these promotions where every few months they'll send you an email and say, if you pay $20, you get the premium account for 3 months. I paid the $20, and I would email as many people as they would allow me to during that time. And it would just be a very short sentence of, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. We're connected, or we could be connected because we have this person in common. I'm very much interested in working for your company, X. I'm particularly interested in this position. I would love 10 minutes of your time to talk to you. And I originally thought, okay, that's never gonna work, like no one's gonna respond to me. Almost everybody that I've emailed has written me back and said, sure, 10 minutes, no big deal. So we always, I think, sometimes underestimate what strangers are willing to do for you. So take that time to use that LinkedIn resource that you have. And during these informational interviews, it's your opportunity to get insider knowledge on that company. So these people can tell you about the culture, they can tell you about the position, they can give you inside knowledge about the interview process, what to expect. Some companies have you take tests during your interview process. Some of them have you go through 3 rounds, 4 rounds. They'll be able to give you that insight so that when you're going in, you have a little bit of an idea of what to expect. And I think that also helps with your confidence level because you're not going in completely blindsided. Anybody have any questions around any of these things? No? Okay. So then the second piece that I wanted to just shed a little light on is mentorship. So we've thrown the word around and we've talked about it, but I really stress on mentorship and really using these relationships because it's really the #1 reason why my career has went the way that it has. And there are different types of mentorships, right? So it's not necessarily the relationship that you have with your boss. Your boss could be a mentor to you, but it's also informal relationships and peer-to-peer mentors. So in this room, you have a mix of mentors that you can walk away with today. So you have the leads that have led essentially the discussion. Those are what you could categorize as like the expert mentors because they're very knowledgeable in their area. But then you could also walk away with meeting people in your group, and those are your peer-to-peer mentors. So you want to make sure that you're staying connected to not only the lead, because they'll help guide you in kind of the career that you want to go into. They'll help answer questions that maybe for you, you think, okay, I shouldn't ask my boss this question, or maybe this is a dumb question, I don't want to ask anybody else. They're the people that you should feel comfortable with because their #1 role is really to support you and make sure that you get to where you are. Your peer-to-peers, that essentially is your colleagues or your friends who are in similar industries, and sometimes not. I found that some of my friends who have a completely different job than I do, I listen to their stories and I find that I can leverage some of their skills. And then really utilizing informal mentors. So what I do for informal mentorship is a couple of my colleagues who are senior than I am, I haven't formally asked them to be my mentor because I think sometimes when it's structured, it loses that natural connection. So what I'll do is maybe like once a month, I'll send him a chat and say like, hey, do you want to go to lunch? Very like off the wall. And then we're having lunch, it's a great conversation, and then right there we slide into, I'm working on this, or this is an area that I'm interested in, or I want to get promoted, what do you think I should do? And people just volunteer information. So it's making sure that you create that opportunity for yourself. Don't wait for anybody else to come to you and essentially offer that information. Now there are also some companies that offer structured mentorship programs. So one company that I used to work for, they had an annual process where you can apply and say I'm interested in this area, and they will assign you a mentor. That one, you really have to make sure that you are nurturing the relationship and cultivating it. So essentially what this means is that person is probably really busy. They have a lot on their plate. They're probably managing, at least in my case, my mentor was managing over 10 people. So I would make sure that at least once per quarter, I would send her an email and say, hey, do you want to have coffee? Or hey, can you meet with me for 10 minutes after work? I will drive to wherever she was because we didn't even work on the same client side. And if she couldn't meet with me in person, I'd write her an email and say, here are the things that I've been working on, here are the things that have been a challenge for me, is there any way that you can help? And within a few minutes, she can tell me, for this area, talk to this person, or for this area, do this. And honest to God, a lot of people want to help. It's just that maybe they are not taking the initiative in themselves to reach out, or they don't know that you need that help. So it's on you to make sure that you create these relationships and nurture them over time. Any questions? Okay. So then the next section we want to talk about is failures. And we thought this was important, and maybe some of your leads touched on this a little bit, but so myself and Pizum, one of our YEP members, we thought it would be really important to share maybe a big failure that's happened in our lives and how we use these skills to kind of get our career on track, as the title of our workshop is called. So I'll let Pizum start first.
So to give you a little background on myself, my name is Fizum. I graduated in 2012. I have a bachelor degree in software engineering, focused in computer science. And I went to school here in the States, and I moved here. I got the best job a girl can dream when she's 21. And I moved to from South Dakota to DC. I didn't think about twice. So I got the job offer on Thursday. I'm here on Tuesday. It was the best job that I can imagine for, and I enjoy working for that company. I was traveling East Coast, wherever. I even went to Canada, Europe for that particular position. And suddenly, without knowing, without getting any heads up, the day I walked into my office, my director asked me to meet him. So it was me and my coworker. We went to his office, and we thought we were getting a promotion. But it was the other side around. So he says the HR person is on the phone, and this person is our lawyer, the company lawyer, and we're told that day was our last day without any heads up. So I didn't know what to do at that moment. I couldn't believe it because on Monday, my immediate manager, he told me I was doing a fantastic job. And then he was asking me if I'm willing to move to New York for another position. So this happened during government shutdown. So I don't know, I was working for a financial company.
So it was more based on, money. I don't know why, but they basically told us we don't have a job, and it happened around 11 p.m. and then they told us we have an hour to pack our stuff and then to leave the office. It was so sudden, and then they even told us not to share this information with any of the other employees. So, we don't really have a choice, so we left the office. And at that moment, my gut told me I'm a very rational thinker, and most of the time my siblings told me I don't think twice. So what I did is I just drove to the recruiter that I know. And then she was like, do you need time, like to swallow it and stuff? I said, how do I market myself to find my next job? Because I'm from my parents' house, I live by myself, I have student loans to pay, I have a lot of responsibilities to do, and at the same time, I have a pride. I'm not gonna call my dad and ask him money to pay for my rent. So I went there to talk to her, and then she was like, would you mind updating your resume? That's the day I found out that job wasn't the right job for me. I graduated in software engineering. I haven't coded for a single day on my first job. So what I was doing is customization. So I was implementing the software they have. I haven't touched any C# or any Java code. So when I was trying to update my resume, I couldn't get any phone calls because what I was doing was wrong for the year. So what I have to do is, instead of, I still do have that company on my resume, but the fact is I have to proactively engage myself into the programming field. So it was hard to do, but what I did is, instead of, I used to wake up at 6 a.m. to go to work. So what I did is I still wake up at 6 a.m. and start studying. So I'll study for half of the day, and then I keep applying for jobs on different sites in the Monster. And this area is so good to find a job. So I started getting phone calls, but I still find it hard to convince the recruiters that I have the knowledge to get my next job. So in that scenario, I don't know how many of you met Gazoo. He was sitting over there. So I haven't even told to anyone that I don't have a job because I always act like I have a job. So I'll leave my apartment 7 a.m. in the morning, dressed up. Looks like I'm going to the job. I'm going to the library, seriously, because if I stay in my room, I know I like to watch movies. I have my PS3, so I prefer to play games versus looking for a job. And I started doing that, and then one day I met him, and then I haven't told him for the first 2 months that I was not being employed, and then I decided to tell him the truth because I haven't told to my parents, I haven't told to my friends, and he is the closest friend I have here. And then the one thing that hits me is I'm not honest to myself that I don't have a job. So I have to be honest with myself to get where I have to be. So I told him, and then he told me all the things I'm doing is wrong because I'm applying to the jobs that I don't have the experience with. So he told me what I have to do is to convince the people. I was sharing this with my group earlier, is to create a website because I keep telling them I know how to write code in ASP.NET, C#, JavaScript, blah blah. So he told me the only way to convince those people is go ahead and then create your website or send in some application that shows my skill sets. And I did that, still nothing. So it's been 4 months now, so I'm still going to Starbucks, all the libraries, Barnes and Noble. And then one day, I was reading a book in Barnes and Noble. So this gentleman walked by, and then he was like, why are you reading this book? And then we start getting into the conversation. I didn't know he works for the company that I'm working right now. And he said, so can you solve this problem? I don't know, there are a lot of white people, so I don't know if you know FizzBuzz as a puzzle. He asked me if I can write him a code that solved that problem. Imagine we are in Barnes and Noble. So I wrote that code for him, and then he asked me why I wrote it that way, and then I explained that for him. And he says, okay, I work for this company, and I'm the director of this. So I want you to email your resume for me. On Monday, I emailed them the resume, and then I got the call from the HR company, And when I walked in, he's the person who's going to interview me. So, yeah, it was. And then he asked me, the first thing he asked me is to solve that problem and in front of the panel, and then I did that. And then at the same time, he, on my resume, added a line that says unemployed from July 20, whatever, until that day. And then they were asking me why I was unemployed, and then I shared the story with them, and then few days back I got the job offer. So the biggest thing that I learned from that is I wasn't honest with myself. I haven't told to the peoples that can really help me. Like if I wasn't telling my story to Gezu, I wouldn't be able to know in order to get my job that I have to create something to show the people or to believe in me that I can do something. So I highly encourage you guys to be honest with yourself. And at the same time, if you fail, you are not the only person who failed. I failed, but I got up. And then I have the nicest job, and I like what I do. I don't know, I might get fired again, but it's just like I am prepared, so I wouldn't be surprised or I wouldn't be in denial again. So if this kind of things happen, reach out to people who you think they are positive minded, because there are people and sometimes they were telling me it's just because we're in the wrong field. It's just because we're female. Yeah, I know there are not a lot of female programmers, so be it. Like, if you know, your knowledge will get you there. So be prepared. It might look good from the outside, but people seem to tell you the happy parts, but there is a failure in each field. And it's how you react to your failure is what matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Katum. So the story that I wanted to share with you guys, and I thought it would be somewhat important because there are a few people in here that are also career switchers. So it's not just that you want to, learn within your area, but you want to switch careers. So for me, my professional background, education, and career has always been in marketing. And my first job was with Booz Allen Hamilton doing government consulting work, and I did that for a few years and realized I don't like my job. It wasn't fun, it wasn't exciting, and I wasn't passionate about it. So the best way that I could think to switch careers, and I talked to a few people, was to get a master's degree. So I wanted to do marketing more on the consumer side. So essentially doing marketing for products that you guys know every day, whether it's Dasani or, I don't know, Kellogg's cereal, things like that. But I wanted to have passion behind the work that I did. So I went to grad school, did this accelerated program, stopped working altogether. I took a sabbatical from Booz. My mom thought I was crazy because the program that I decided to go into would put me into debt for the rest of my life, essentially. So I took the risk, left town. I was living in Chicago, going to school, and I decided when I graduated that I wanted to move back to DC. Now, I did this knowing that DC doesn't have a lot of marketing jobs. If I really wanted to be successful in my arena, I probably should have moved to New York or Chicago or somewhere in California, but I decided to come home. But I was a little cocky. So I came back and I'm like, oh, I have a master's degree. I'm gonna find a job right away. My backup plan was that I took a sabbatical with Booz. Technically, I was employed even though I wasn't getting a paycheck from them. Technically, I was on their books. So I said, for my resume, it'll be okay. So I called Booz when I got back and they said, we don't have any projects for you. And I said, all right, well, I'll take a month vacation, I'll stay at home, work on my resume a little bit more. And I was unemployed for 8 months. So I was at home, similar to Fitzum's situation, applying for jobs, and it didn't hit me probably until like the end of the first month, going to the second month, like, crap, I might not have anything to do for, God knows when. So originally, I was just tweaking my resume, submitting online applications, waiting for the phone to ring, because I thought, oh, I have these skill sets, and there are not a lot of marketing people in this area, so I'm sure I'll get a job. No one was calling me, okay? Like, I thought I was the biggest thing. No one else agreed with me. So I really had to change my approach. And what I started doing was really going back to what I talked about earlier with the LinkedIn piece and finding people to get myself through the door. And then I started really reading about even the job application process. So if I was submitting an application, I worked to make sure that my resume spoke to that particular job. And people say this, and I don't know that we all do it because I didn't do it initially, because it's time consuming. If you're applying for 10 different jobs a day, you're tailoring your resume to almost every single one. And not just your resume, I was also writing cover letters. So that's a lot of work, and it's almost a full-time job looking for a job while you're stressed out about how am I gonna pay my bills. So I did that, and really nothing was still coming through. So I said, okay, I'm just gonna rely on my resources. I used some networks. I reached back out to someone that I knew in Chicago, a professor that I knew from grad school, had them put me in touch with someone in the company that I was applying to. And I got interviews, but then I also realized, okay, nothing was panning through. Either I would get to the second level interview and I would be knocked out, or I wouldn't make it past the first one. So then I started calling the HR people back and saying, I just want to know why. Why did I not get the job? Because I think feedback is key. You don't know what you're doing wrong unless someone who has spoken with you can tell you. I also had people in my network look at my resume, and I told them, take a red pen like teachers do when you're younger, and I said, mark